Since 1934, Iowa's farmers have turned to the Iowa Farm Bureau spokesman as their trusted news source. Now, the Spokesman Speaks. Listen in and hear from leading experts on topics important to farmers and agriculture. Now, here's your host.
Welcome to our January 30th edition of the Spokesman Speaks podcast. I'm Andrew Wheeler, and this week's episode features an entrepreneur who will make you rethink the future of row crop planting. Back in January of 2020, Northern Iowa farmer and choir teacher Jayson Ryner decided to invent a solution to a problem he was facing in his soggy fields, and the ReEnvision Ag planting system was born. 3 years later, ReEnvision Ag was a top 10 finalist in American Farm Bureau's 2023 Ag Innovation Challenge, which is a national business competition for U.S. startups that are developing innovative solutions for farmers and rural communities. The challenge allowed ReEnvision Ag and 9 other businesses to receive mentoring and compete for cash prizes at the American Farm Bureau Annual Convention in Puerto Rico earlier this month. That's where Iowa Farm Bureau's Zach Bader caught up with Jayson Ryner.
I'm joined by Jayson Ryner, who's the creator of ReEnvision Ag, and we're here in beautiful Puerto Rico for the American Farm Bureau Annual Convention. But before we get to your company, Jayson, tell me a little bit about your background. Where are you from, and what were you doing before you created ReEnvision Ag?
Well, I grew up in north central Iowa, son of a corn and soybean farmer, and we raised hogs, and my dad sold feeder pigs. Child of the farm crisis, so being on the farm didn't look all that great when I graduated from high school, and I went to college to be a music teacher, and I spent 7 years teaching high school and junior high vocal music before I went to North Iowa Area Community College in 2001, and then several years later, I decided to restart a farming operation on my family farm. And from there, we started using no-till, strip-till, and cover crops, and ReEnvision Ag was born.
So what is ReEnvision Ag, and when did you create that?
ReEnvision Ag is 3 years and 1 day old. Following the spring of 2019, I wanted to create a different way to plant row crops. I entered the University of Iowa Venture School on the NIAC campus in Mason City. And then from there, we've just been working on developing this row unit and getting out and learning more about what the challenge was and how to face it and overcome it.
Okay, so tell us about how this works then. Tell us what this product is.
The easiest way to plant a seed is to press a seed into the soil and cover the hole that's remaining. And that's what we do. We have a row unit that will attach to the planter that the farmer already owns. Just take 4 bolts off of the parallel arms and put our row unit back on in that place. And because of the focus point of our seed spike, we do not create any compaction, or rather the least amount of compaction is at the very bottom of the hole. So no sidewall compaction, no disc opener compaction, and that allows us to plant in much wetter soils. So for farmers who are no-tilling or using strip till, but they don't use any freshener in the springtime, or if you're planting into cover crops so the sun doesn't hit the soil and dry it out quite as well as naturally, this planter we've demonstrated is you can plant 5 to 7 days ahead of a disc opener.
So I heard you say during your presentation, this is truly something that's different.
The planter itself has only changed one time since 1853, where it touches the soil. In 1853, the first planter was invented, and it had what they called a shoe, which drug across the ground and made a seed trench. Then we got the disc opener, and that became standard in the 1970s, and nothing has changed since. And that is the only way that we have to plant row crops.
So what kind of reception have you had to this so far? Have you had farmers try this, and what has been their experience with it?
So far, our development has been amazing, and the feedback that we've gotten from farmers is incredible. We entered the Ag Launch Ag Accelerator in Memphis, Tennessee, and farmers in the South who plant cotton into cover crops are really excited about getting a new way to just poke a hole and put the seed in it, because cotton doesn't have very much vigor and it has a hard time getting out of the ground, and any compaction from the closing wheels really impedes that. So farmers in the South are very excited about that. Farmers in our neck of the woods in Iowa are excited for corn, whether it be that you plant in hills and you don't want to run a disc opener down the hill because then when there's a rain, it washes out the seed trench and washes out the seed. Well, poking a hole means there's no seed trench to wash out. For farmers that are using cover crops, again, planting corn into a green cover crop or into a strip that was established in the fall, we can get in there, plant a lot earlier, and have no fear of any compaction that will eliminate germination, emergence, or root growth.
So you're a farmer, a choir teacher, an MBA in economics. What gave you the confidence to think that you could develop something like this, and what kind of support have you received along the way?
The creativity that I've spent all my life working as a choral musician, really, I've spent years and years focusing my mind on the creative side. When I went back to farming, I'd been away from it long enough that I questioned the way we did things. Well, why is there only a disc opener? Well, that's just the way we've always done it. And so that perspective of coming from, even though I grew up on an Iowa farm, and I've always considered myself an Iowa farm kid, being away and concentrating on something else for so long, I think gave me a fresh perspective to look at it. And then when I started farming, prices went down in the early 20-teens, and I signed up as a beginning farmer program to use cover crops and strip till and no-till, and then I received payments for adopting those conservation practices because I was a beginning farmer. And that's how I used that money to really start my farming operation from scratch. Then 2018 and 2019 happened with our wettest 2 years on record back to back. And I was super frustrated that there was no way that I could get into the field. The cover crop would have held up the tractor, but I couldn't put the disc opener in the ground. And from there, I have the business degree, so that made me think, well, I have some acumen on being able to put together business plans and business ideas. And then I entered the University of Iowa Venture School. And at the University of Iowa Venture School on the Nyack campus, we vetted out all of the business model. Who are the customers? What problems do they face? Who will have to be the key partners? What are the steps that we will have to take to get to manufacturing and get through all of that? And when I went through that program, it answered a lot of the questions, and there were no stop signs. Spencer Stensrud from Ag Ventures Alliance, the CEO of Ag Ventures Alliance, which is a venture capital firm in Mason City, was my mentor through the University of Iowa Venture School. And he was very interested and very helpful in really creating this business plan so that we haven't had any major pivots. Since the beginning, we've been looking at a retrofit row unit as a way to enter this market. And so that confidence from Venture School, from the Papa John Center at North Iowa Area Community College, all of those things put together, plus my own farming experience, it really said, all right, let's take this shot. And it is a moonshot, right? I mean, there's a whole bunch of blue sky here. But anywhere in an environment when there's only one way to do things, and we're going through such a huge soil health revolution, that there cannot be only one way to do it. And if no one has explored other ways, then how do we know what we're doing is the best way? So that market opening and that experience, and then Nyack's Papa John Center really got me going.
So over the years, we've seen a lot of examples of farmers, Iowa farmers, growing enthusiasm for adopting, or in this case, actually creating solutions that protect the soil and reduce their environmental footprint. So why do you think that is? We're talking about big challenges here. Like you said, we're talking about practices that have been this way for a long time, and huge challenges like soil health, reducing erosion, protecting water quality, huge challenges. And yet there's a lot of enthusiasm I sense on behalf of farmers, and you specifically with this invention here. in making that happen. So why do you think that farmers are embracing that?
Well, necessity is the mother of invention. Farmers are stewards of the soil. And I think that the Iowa farmer, the American farmer, takes that responsibility super seriously. We also understand that these are businesses that we're running. We have to be profitable. So to be profitable while farming sustainably is one of these holy grails, right? How well can I take care of my ground so that not only can I farm next year, but I can farm for 10 years, I can farm for 40 years, my children can farm, my grandchildren can farm. How do we do that profitably and sustainably? And I think it has become a passion for me, but I think that it is a passion for a lot of Iowa farmers.
You mentioned the shot that you're taking here with this product. You mentioned the testing that's been done with farmers at this point. Where does this product stand right now today? Is it still in that testing phase? Is it available to farmers on a larger scale? Where do things stand, and where do you see it going next?
We are in our third prototype that we think is going to come to what is called minimum viable product, which is a product that we can go out and do custom planting for farmers. And by doing the custom planting, that reduces a lot of the risk for farmers. They don't have to buy a new piece of equipment. They can actually have us come plant on 40 acres or 60 acres. We're almost to the point that we can do that. So this spring, what we're going to do is put acres on our prototype row unit. We've tightened up all of the tolerances, and now we need to put a large number of acres on it to find out about durability and wear, and get more research and more results from emergence, and really see how the crop emerges compared to the double disc opener on a broader scale. So we've done small tests, hundreds of feet at a time, where we've seen just remarkable results. We've demonstrated the ability to plant 5 to 7 days ahead of when you would run a field cultivator. And that amount of time to a farmer to widen that planting window that far is going to be really huge. So we want to test it, get some acres underneath that row unit, get university research with the University of Missouri, and then we're going to duplicate the program on the campus of North Iowa Area Community College in Mason City. Then hopefully spring 24, we'll be doing custom planting. Farmers have reached out to us from 12 different states to do field trials. So do custom planting in as many places as we can, in as many soil types as we can. We're focusing on corn and cotton right now. So we're going to limit it to those two crops, so that then in 24, sign farmers up that might want to lease row units. Again, protecting the farmer, helping them to adopt a new technology, helping more farmers come and see us plant with it so that they can see how it works. So leasing probably in 25, and then row unit sales in probably 25 and into 26.
When you think about the future of this product, of this company, what excites you the most?
Well, this is where the blue sky is really blue. Autonomous robots, swarm robots, have a really hard time planting with a double disc opener. That double disc opener is first, it's very hard to get into the ground. And if you want to think about how we get our seed spike in the ground, it's like a woman with a high-heeled shoe. A 120-pound woman can put a 3-inch high heel clear into the ground without hardly any effort at all. Trying to press a set of disc openers into the ground by hand really outlines how much pressure and downforce is being applied on the soil. And then when you drag it through the soil, you can really tell that there's a whole ton more energy being used as we drag that disc opener through the soil. Our seed spike really reduces that drag. It really reduces that need for weight and pressure. And so I see autonomous robots being able to plant back and forth. And again, if we're talking about being able to plant when it's wet, right now the limiting factor of planting when it's wet is the double disc opener. When we remove that barrier, the next barrier will be the weight of the tractor and the weight of the planter. So if a 200-pound man can walk across the field, we'll be able to plant it. Also, at the same time that we can plant, we already can deposit gel caps of nitrogen fertilizer into the root zone. So I see us geolocating where we put each seed, because where we poke that in the ground, that's where that plant's going to grow. And I see us coming back and poking fertilizer into the ground right next to it. So we look at in the fall how we put on anhydrous for nitrogen that gets used the next summer. Well, if you have a derecho in the month of June, all of that fertilizer, it all gets wasted. And not only environmentally is that not great, but from a practical farmer balance sheet or our checkbook, you've paid for all that nitrogen. So we think we can come back and now individually fertilize and specifically fertilize when the plant needs it in the amount that it needs it. And the worry about not being able to get back in the field because the rain will come or whatever is not going to happen anymore, because the swarm robot will just go right between the rows and put that nitrogen in. So really looking out at the future of agriculture with autonomous robots doing a lot of our planting, a lot of our fertilization, and the seed spike is really the foundation or the cornerstone of that future.
When farmers see a challenge, innovation and action will often follow. And that's definitely the case in this instance. Congrats to Jayson on his company's top 10 finish in the Ag Innovation Challenge. And we'd also like to congratulate 2 other Iowa entrepreneurs who placed in the top 4 of that competition. Iowans Katie Olthoff and Jared Aachen finished in the top 4 with their company, ChopLocal, which they describe as an online farmers market for meat. We actually interviewed Katie and Jared about their company back in episode 72 of the Spokesman Speaks podcast, so you can learn more about ChopLocal by scrolling back to that episode or using the episode link that we've added to the notes for this episode. Okay, one more thing before you go. In just a couple of days, we're going to be offering a series of workshops at locations across the state to help farmers develop strategies for managing their tight operating margins in 2023. The workshops are free for Farm Bureau members and $50 for everyone else. If that sounds like something that could benefit your farm, you really need to act now, because the first workshop in Nevada takes place on February 2nd. We'll also offer the workshop in Atlantic, Storm Lake, Washington, and Independence during different dates in February, so you'll want to get signed up now for the location nearest you. For that, you can just head out to iowafarmbureau.com or click on the link we've included in the notes for this podcast episode. That's it for this edition of the Spokesman Speaks podcast. We hope you enjoyed it and that you'll join us for our next one on February 13th. Thank you for doing the work that inspires everything we do here at the Iowa Farm Bureau, and thanks for listening to the Spokesman Speaks.
Thank you for listening to the Spokesman Speaks, a podcast by Iowa Farm Bureau. Check out more podcast episodes at iowafarmbureau.com/podcast. You can also find and subscribe to the Spokesman Speaks podcast in the Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and other popular podcast apps. We appreciate your ratings and reviews, and we welcome you to email us your feedback at podcast@ifbf.org.